All right, story about the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. This is also relevant to this week's Torah portion. We're just talking about the Torah. So the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, he sometimes went to various places for, for rest, for recuperation. However, he was in one place. I don't know if it was this rest and recuperation place or whatever. Anyway, so a woman came to see him with her son. And she said, I heard that the Rebbe is here. Usually when they would find out that the Rebbe was in a different town, so there would be a long line of people that came in. They wanted to see him. So this woman came to see him. She brought her son. The boy was maybe 20 years old, 25 years old. He came in very haughty, without a kippah, without the tzitzis, without anything, smoking a cigarette. He sat down on the table, put his feet up on the Rebbe's desk. And the woman said, this is my son. The woman was religious, a religious Jew. Says, this is my son. He's a professor in mathematics. And he doesn't want to have anything to do with Judaism. And he says that Judaism is foolish and it's antiquated and that we have to leave the whole thing. It's just the whole thing is just a big, it's a big mistake, Judaism and religion in general and Judaism especially. And I don't know what to do. I don't know how to talk to. I heard that maybe you can convince him. So this young man says, Rabbi, I heard that you're not like all the other rabbis, that you're wise, that you have wisdom. Say something wise. Let's hear something. Say something wise. So the Rebbe said, well, do you put on tefillin? I said, no. Tefillin? And what about Shabbat? Do you keep Shabbat? Said, please, I came here because I heard you were different. Can you say something wise? I said, well, what about eating kosher? Do you eat kosher? He says, I see this. I haven't got nothing to do here. Excuse me, I'm leaving. So the Rebbe said, well, and listen, you came from far away. They said the city where they came from was several hours drive. You came from far away. Why? Let me just tell you a story. So you leave with something. It's a story. What do you think? I'm a child. You're telling me bedtime stories? What do you? I'm leaving. He says, well, listen. The Rebbe said, listen, the story is only maybe 5 minutes long, maybe less. 5 minutes. What do you have to? I said, okay, all right. Listen to the story. So the Rebbe said, to take your foot off my desk. I'll tell you this story. Once upon a time, there was a professor in mathematics, something like you. And he one day was giving a lecture to his pupils, 100, 200 pupils. And suddenly, in the middle of the lecture, he got this amazing idea. And he told everybody to wait 1 second. He took a pen and paper and he wrote it down on a paper. It took him about 5-10 minutes. And he stood up and he resumed his lecture, but suddenly more ideas came to his mind. And he said, I'm sorry, but I just had an idea. I'm going to have to stop the lecture here. We'll continue at a later date. Please excuse me. And he sat and he wrote this thing down, stayed up all night, wrote this formula down that he had this idea in mathematics. Genius idea. In the morning, he went to the dean of students, the dean of the university, showed him what he had done. And the dean agreed that it was a breakthrough. It was a breakthrough. His idea was a breakthrough. And he said, I'll even give you a staff. You can work on this idea with your staff. And so, anyway, so he gave him a room, gave him food, gave him free. They found a substitute professor for him. And he just sat and he worked on this treatise. And it was just a piece of genius. And it got to the point where all of his help, they couldn't help him anymore. He just was, flying. He just had these amazing ideas. And he wrote this treatise and he changed it and he refined it and he verified it and etc. And finally, it was about 100 pages of mathematical formulas and explanations and etc. that he had written. And he put it on his desk and he went outside. For the first time in about a year, he went outside. He went outside. Walking, it was in the middle of the night, fresh air, cool air, and he was smoking a cigarette. And he was thinking about as soon as he published this, he'll go in the morning, he'll bring it to the publisher, he'll publish it, as for sure it'll just rock the whole mathematical world, and he'll be famous. And the Rebbe turned to the boy and said, "Are you listening? You listening to this?" Yes, I'm listening to the story, but please finish your story. Told. So the Rebbe said, "Okay, I'll finish just in a couple of minutes." So he's this man, the professor. So he's thinking about how great his thesis is, but how he's going to maintain a certain degree of humility, and he's not going to leave his university immediately, only after a certain amount of time. And then, of course, he put a big. I have to remember to put a big thank you to our university, this and where it is, and certainly he'll get a lot of money, and he'll give something to charity, and he'll be famous. Anyway, he finally comes home after all these thoughts. He comes home and he looks. He's amazed. He sees in his house on his floor, there's all the pages of his thesis that he wrote, and there's maybe like there's a big black line on the, like ink, a big line across the page, as if someone must have come in and read his thesis, and individual pages, there was something wrong with them. Maybe from the 100 pages, there was 30, 40 of them that had a line through it. I thought, where could I have made a mistake? How could it be that I made a mistake? Right? It couldn't be just somebody wanted to wreck up my page. He could have just, thrown it in the fire. Someone must have read this, and he put a line on the pages that there was a mistake. What type of a mistake? He starts to gather the papers together. Where could it be? He's thinking deeply. It's a year of thought. He's going back more until he faints, passes out. After 5 minutes, 10 minutes, he wakes up out of his fainting. Where am I? What happened? The whole room is spinning around. He sort of comes to himself. He looks on the floor, sees his paper, suddenly realizes, "Oi, the paper, there must be a mistake. Where could it possibly be?" And he faints again. After a few minutes, he wakes up again and looks. He says, "Where am I? What happened?" Oh, he faints again. Meanwhile, the neighbors hear this, so they run down to see what's happening. They hear the thud, his body falling on the ground. They immediately see what's there. They call the police. The police come. They bring a doctor to see what's going on with this great professor, what's going on. And so they come in, the doctors come in, and they resuscitate the person. He looks around, says, "Oh, my papers," and he faints again. So the head doctor that's there, he's a smart person. So he looks around, and he comes back to the person, brings smelling salts. The person wakes up, he says, "Oh, my pieces, don't listen. It's just a cat. It's a cat." He said, "What?" "It's a cat. It's a cat." "What do you mean it's a cat?" He says, "Both, come with me, stand up." He says, "See here, the window is open. See this print, this cat paw print, a footprint of a cat out here?" He says, "A cat must have come into the room, and here, see, he knocked over a bottle of ink, and his tail must have gone into the ink, and he jumped on this table, scattered all the papers around, and his tail went, and he put the lines through the papers. It was a cat that put a line through the paper." And the professor said, "Oh, it's a cat. It's only a cat. It's just a cat." That's the end of the story. The previous Rebbe said, that's the end of the story. This boy, the professor, said, "What?" He said, "That's the most stupid story I ever heard in my life. You made me waste 5 minutes of my life to hear that ridiculous, childish, stupid story." The Rebbe said, "Oh, no. What I meant to say is, just like that professor laughed at the cat. Why? Because what does a cat understand from mathematics? Cat understands nothing. Well, even more than that, I laugh at you. The Torah is the wisdom of God. A cat understands more mathematics than you can understand the wisdom of God himself. Mathematics and a cat, they're both creations. But God is the creator. He's creating you. And his wisdom is infinitely incomparable, greater than mathematics. And on the other hand, your understanding of God's will and God's wisdom is infinitely less than what a cat can understand from mathematics." The young man heard this. Suddenly he changed this whole paradigm. It's a whole paradigm shift. He thought that he was the greatest and that everything else was below him. Suddenly he realized that could be that God is the greatest and that he's just a creation, like a cat is. The young man heard about it. After a while, he went home and he changed his whole way of life to be in accordance to the Torah. Have a good day with Mashiach now. See you all tomorrow. Shalom Uvracha.